we took more time in explaining the thrust of the strategy and tactics, and we highlighted areas which were areas contested in the strategy and tactics, if I may put it that way. There's nothing much coming out of the national conference as it regards to the strategy and tactics. There's a general endorsement of the strategy and tactics of the ANC, or the draft strategy and tactics.
Some funny sound.
Which we have shared with all of you from the media. Safe to say that the emphasis has been made this time around, as it happened in the past, that perhaps in the strategy and tactics we need to delve deeper on the dynamics on the continent, including what has happened recently in Zimbabwe and so on, and find a way of raising it on the strategy and tactics, both from the point of view of the historical evolution of the liberation movements across the continent, particularly in the region here, and look at the phenomenon of the site of struggle, which is Parliament, the Fifth Parliament, and what is happening there. How does it affect or tilt the balance of forces in favor or against the National Liberation Movement? Then there was an issue about the monopoly capital. I think that's one area which there was some discussion on. But the view, because you remember when we, the last time we met at the policy conference, the view of the policy conference was that the structures of the ANC should go back and reflect on this conceptual issue, which is monopoly capital, so that we have a clearer understanding on the way forward. Structures came back and people reported in different commissions. I may say that even now there is a lot of discussion from different perspectives, I must say. And the conference then says that let's do much work as the organization, especially on the different sectors of society and how they are in terms of ownership and so on. But there were strong views that the issue here is about the formulation. How do we seek to formulate this conceptual issue, which will synthesize the different emphasis on the strategy and tactics? As we said last time, that even this time there's been an expression that what the ANC should focus on is the content, which is monopoly capital, and make a point very clear that whether it's black or yellow or white, the fact of the matter is that the uncompetitive practices of monopoly capital has to be shunned by the ANC. And in the colonial character of the ANC, the area of the form, which is white in South Africa, should not be dismissed as non-existent, but how you formulate your conceptual framework on monopoly capital, you have to emphasize what you have been doing all along. The issue became when there's been matters where people accuse the ANC of being denialists on the colonial character of monopoly capital. And the fact that Bill Pottinger help the ANC. So this wonderful person gave thought to the ANC, an expression of white monopoly capital. So the ANC as a movement cannot think it on its own on conceptual issues. Somebody came in there, which was busted as a myth, basically, because the movement's own phraseology over a period of time, if you take the road to South African freedom in 1962, it alludes to the fact of white monopoly capital. We made that example there. We made the example of O.R. Tambo in Morocco.
Discussions in branches and provincial general councils. It was clear from the contribution of branch delegates to conference across commissions that BGMs engaged with the National Policy Conference recommendations. Conference salutes branches for taking their constitutional responsibility seriously. Commissions agreed with the challenges identified by the NPC and further noted that we face a major challenge, not of diagnosis and responses, but of implementation. The Commission therefore recommended that the 54th National Conference ratifies the recommendation from the 5th Policy Conference, on which was finalized by the National Executive Committee or referred to structures for discussions towards the National General Council. The commissions made the following additional recommendation to be processed by the National Executive Committee, noting that due to shortage of time, it was not canvassed with all commissions and therefore not exhaustively discussed. On the work of branches in the community, the Commission did not agree with the establishment of 2 membership categories, with supporters as membership category, and proposed branches should rather be involved in community engagement and activities, implement a modernized, technologically enabled membership system that will speed up the delivery of membership cards and allow for electronic membership renewal. In line with the Polokwane resolution, resource branches, including implementing the resolution to allocate a portion or the whole membership fee to branches. ANC branches must have a visible presence in communities through offices, which can also serve our communities and strengthen links with ANC councillors. Ensure compulsory branch induction based on the ANC branch manual adopted by the NEC. Review ward-based branches. Consider the establishment of international ANC structures in countries with a large South African diaspora like United Kingdom. Strengthen sub-branches on membership recruitment, linking our targets with the size of the population. For instance, 1 household on ANC member. The ANC should ensure that leaders deployed in government go through compulsory, regular and ongoing development in addition to the responsibility of individuals to continually develop themselves. On elections, we agreed that we must implement the resolution on maintaining full-time election capacity at national, provincial and regional level. In selecting ANC councillors, our process should start with communities before finalization by the ANC. On the alliance, we must continue to build a strong alliance and urgently convene a political council of the alliance to develop a structured program to discuss the different positions held by alliance partners on the configuration of the alliance. On sectoral work, recognizing the need to strengthen sectoral work across society as per the NPC recommendation, Commission made the following additions. Given the importance of the women and youth in our society, the National Executive must support the Youth League and Women's League to fulfill their missions, for the Youth League to organize, lead, and champion the interest of young people in society and the ANC, and for the ANC Women's League to mobilize, organize, and champion a cause for women. The ANC must also ensure that it champions gender equality in the organization and society, so that it is not only left as the task of the ANC Women's League. Given the changes in demographics and in particular our young population, Conference should advise the Youth League to consider its cut-off age to be in line with its youthful constituency, no more 37-year-olds. Reconsider the issue of sectoral branches so as to enhance the ANC's ability to reach different sectors and lead society, for instance, in universities. Strengthen organizational work among minorities and implement a focused program to build non-racialism. Discuss with the Youth League the process of the SRC elections to be contested primarily by SASCO, supported by the Progressive Youth Alliance, not the other way around. The ANC Youth League participate in these processes to build the hegemony of the progressive forces. On regions and sub-regions. Sub-regions should not be linked to municipal boundaries. On ANC electoral processes in the ANC and managing succession, the NEC should process the proposal that ANC members vote directly for the NEC members for discussions towards the National General Council. Support the NPC recommendation for capping the percentage of NEC members deployed in government. Establish a permanent election commission in the ANC that is not composed of elected leadership with original powers, responsible for managing the election of ANC leadership at all levels. Ensure that those contesting leadership positions declare their interests, including the amount and sources of money for campaigning. Also deal with conflict of interest in candidate selection of public office. Before I left plenary, there was a rider on this point to say that this matter must be open for discussion going forward in relation to how we approach this, precisely because the question of people declaring themselves candidates must find expression in the ANC processes, not just an individual cause. But should there be such a process, the question of money, the branding of vehicles and all of that, it must be known that you've got money, but where does it come from? So that we don't entertain the question of money laundering and all other things. Because in terms of the law, that can lead to racketeering and many other things. And arrest. The election of leadership in all structures must ensure continuity as well as renewal. The NEC should manage the two centers of power after National Conference. You know the two centers of power. Yes, that is what we say, that the National Executive Committee must actually manage that particular process. Consideration should be given to extending the provision for gender equity to the top officials' positions in all structures. Because the question of gender equity apply across. Now the proposal here, it says that it must consider equity on the top 6 so that we don't end up with the bloodbath we have seen in relation to the proposals that must be processed in the National General Council. On the Council of Elders proposes the establishment of a Council of Elders consisting of eminent ANC leaders, including former senior officials, presidents, SGs, etc., to advise and engage on challenges facing the movement, on ANC credibility and integrity, dealing with corruption. Implement the National Executive Committee resolution on state capture, including the expeditious establishment of a judicial commission of inquiry. On the Integrity Commission, The establishment and composition, powers and functions of the Integrity Committee should be provided for in the ANC Constitution. It should have original powers, and its decisions should be binding. It must report on its work to the National Executive Committee, to the National Conference. On discipline, we need to introduce clear dispute resolution mechanisms to tackle organizational matters, to combat courts as the first resort for resolving conflicts. It should be a last resort. The relevant structures must investigate and act on allegations of gatekeeping. On ex-combatants, note the work started by the outgoing NEC to investigate the issues relating to MKMVA and the MK Council, and mandate the incoming NEC to facilitate unity and inclusion of all MK ex-combatants. On the battle of ideas, develop protocols aimed at guiding conduct on social media to be included in our code of conduct. In conclusion, the Commissions therefore recommended that the 54th National Conference ratifies the recommendations from the 5th National Policy Conference, on which there were consensus. 2, further recommends that conference mandates the NEC on areas where options have not been dealt with, and the additional recommendation from conference commissions to finalize this or refer to structures for discussions towards the National General Council as we deal with organizational renewal and design in the organization. Lastly, number 3, mandate the NEC to drive a sustained program of organizational renewal and report on such to the National General Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Fikile. Can you take questions? Where are the mics? Ranjini, Natasha, Sepo, in that order. No. Ranjini, you'll have to stand up.
The superior power from the two centers now, in conference's view, which is the ultimate authority between the House and the Union Government. And secondly, the issue of capping the number of ANC members in the state, does that mean that the ANC is going to have more involvement in terms of deployment and more consultation with whoever has prerogative in the state to make deployments? On the Integrity Committee, you say that the establishment and composition should be provided for in the Constitution, but you've concluded constitutional amendments. Does that mean you're not going to have an Integrity Committee for the next 5 years? How is that going to work? Thank you.
The follow-up on the keeping of the deployment of these members to cabinet or executive, is there a threshold of which the members are proposing in terms of how much of the percentage should be allowed to serve in cabinet? And on the issue of the reduction of the NEC, I didn't hear anything coming out of that. Was that entertained when we have a number? And lastly, on the Integrity Committee, as you have given more powers, but we know that most of the time people will be appearing for it because of the term of proving innocent activity in the court of law. I'm going to be concerned with that going forward in terms of giving them their powers.
Dr. Mkabisi, I know that is a subject very serious to you. Okay. Pete. Oh, looks like there are no questions this side. Oh. Juanita?
The issue of the resolution of the Commission of Inquiry State Project, can we say that the decision of the Commission of Inquiry State Capture is a resolution of this conference? Is it the same one that was recommended by the public teacher, or does it want something different? And the second thing
coming this side. Yes. Conrad, wait there. I know you're gonna make us laugh. No, Conrad.
Another question I have in terms of the Integrity Commission, the suggestions that they be elected, and would they be elected in a different process between the election of the integrity process that will take the Integrity Commission that will be taken? And since you mentioned that they also have to give a report back to the ANC, so whatever they decide, will they have to also be seconded by the ANC for it to be enforced, or will they be able to do the disciplinary report on their own?
From EICA, Mr. Martin Tedford, this one's for you. About this concept of monopoly capital and its character. The explanation you give makes a lot of sense, but I want to know how you're going to deal with the bastardization of this concept in the manner that has happened in the elected conference build-up, because I suggest that you have a problem now, because white monopoly capital stopped being about the colonial nature of monopoly capital in South Africa and became a swear word in your elected conference processes, with the result that we sit now with a president of the ANC that a good section of your own organization had labeled a stooge of white monopoly capital. How do you deal with that now that the dust has settled?
Last said to follow up on monopoly capital. This has been an issue going on since the 1960s that the ANC has addressed it, but it doesn't say, none of the documentation of the ANC document says would it be that, would you legislate to break up the monopolies? Would you nationalize the monopolies? Would you be for alternative models for forcing the communities and the workers onto the boards of these monopolies? That's not addressed in the documentation.
Conrad.
Thank you, Comrade Zizi. This is Chester missing from the ABZ slate. Minister Mbrula, you mentioned having a social, hope you're doing well, you're having a social media policy, you say, will that include you retweeting and subtweeting yourself about the outrageous tweets that you have made, and if not, will you recall your Twitter account? Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
No, I'm from Kasia Campus. My question goes to Minister Balula or Balula. Balula, you spoke about the state capture. Does the ANC knows when the President of the Republic is going to appoint a judicial commission into the state capture? Do you know maybe when? The exact date, time?
And place. And place.
In the policy conference, it was recommended that the Economic Commission prepares a report conference on industries where monopolies are active and recommendations are to be made. Can you inform us what the content of this report was and what was?
I now give the chairperson's right to reply. Comrade Nyambose.
Well, thanks, Comrade Zizi. Perhaps let me start with the last one. The ETC, you're correct, the Economic Transformation Committee is still working on that. They are not ready with the report on different sectors, as it were. And that coincides with the fact that the strategy and tactics document has to be finalized soon. With the incoming NEC, has to ensure that it finalizes it and taking into cognizance what would have come out of that process. The gentleman, I missed the name about the monopolies. The strategy and tactics, one of the things in disciplining monopolies raises the question of strengthening competition authorities as one of the areas which need to be, or as one of the steps which need to be strengthened or utilized to ensure that the monopolies are disciplined. But this is done against the backdrop of the relationship between the National Democratic Revolution and movement with monopoly capital and capital generally. That is the unity and struggle or contestation and cooperation. So the emphasis here has been on the disciplining, and the question has been how, and how do we discipline monopolies? And that's one of the areas which has been used. No, Thula Sizwe, the debate will continue. It will continue. There's been some work done in terms of the monopolies in South Africa and the practice itself. Using it as a swear word, I wouldn't want to get into that, but the most important thing is that it is a debate, and it is a debate which has to ensure that you synthesize different backgrounds on the very same point. I don't think any leader of the ANC would be part and parcel of swearing to each other, as it were. But the fact and what you are raising is that it is an ongoing debate. It will be ongoing until I don't know when. But the most important thing which I think we need to emphasize, as we said in the policy conference, is that how we've been going about crafting in the strategy and tactics this question of monopoly capital from 2007, particularly in the national conference, that should be prevailing. I know when we said that last time, people said that, well, the ANC has done away with the view of white monopoly capital, which was not the truth. Because the report of the policy conference and what we've been deliberating on, which is that report, it's not shunning away from white monopoly capital, exactly from the policy conference itself. But what we are seeking to do is to ensure that we speed up, because if there is no clarity on the question of the strategy and tactics, all other matters, whether it's organizational renewal, whether it's social transformation, including economic transformation and so on, you are not going to get a clear way forward, because it means the roadmap, which is a strategy and tactics, is not clear on that. But I can say that it will take a lot of work to change how we've always formulated, without being denialist, how we've always formulated monopoly capital at the conceptual level. Thank you.
Yes, first on the question of the two centers of power. We are saying in terms of the commissions that that must be managed by the National Executive Committee. The center of power, it is the African National Congress. It is the ANC that takes decisions and gives direction to its deployees in government. The National Executive Committee will process this resolution in terms of implementation. So that is what it means. So with regard to the two centers of power, it is the African National Congress that takes decision and give mandate to its deployees who are in government a clear program of what needs to be done in terms of their areas of deployment. In terms of capping percentage, we didn't put a percentage, but we adopted the resolution that says that we must implement this recommendation because from the discussions that we've had in terms of organizational renewal, we were saying that it is important that there is not a dominance of cabinet in the power structures of the movement as it relates to the National Executive Committee and the NWC. So the NEC must process that towards the General Council, because you realize that the National Executive Committee is elected at conference. And to an extent that we can put this in the Constitution and put a cap, it's a matter that we need to continue to process and think about it going forward. But the principle is agreed that for now, going forward, this matter must be considered by the organization and have a balance in terms of the number of cabinet members in the power structures of the National Executive Committee. Integrity Commission, we are agreed here that it must actually be given full powers and original powers in the Constitution of the ANC. So the Constitutional Committee amendments that when I left in the plenary, they were being tabled. They will include the Integrity Commission, so that the Integrity Commission, in terms of its powers in the ANC, it can bite. It is not an option for a member to appear before the Integrity Commission. If the Integrity Commission feels that, make an assessment that a member of the ANC is bringing the organization into disrepute, it must not ask the NEC whether or not can we convene this member. It must simply exercise its powers and say, dear member, come here and explain yourself. Why do you have so many girlfriends and so on and so on? So, and then the Integrity Commission will take decisions, and the decisions of the Integrity Commission must be final and binding. Now we're talking, we know that we are not in a space where we can do as we wish. There is integrity that must be enforced. It's not like this thing of integrity, it is negotiable. It's not. It is something that wherever you are as a member of the ANC deployed, when you undermine the ANC, its integrity, you can be called. Who appointed? It is the National Executive Committee. It will appoint this Integrity Commission that is very dangerous to deal with issues of integrity and enforce the law in the ANC that matters of integrity are not negotiable. The NEC will appoint that committee, and then it will exist thereafter. So the constitutional recommendations are dealing with that. The public protector recommendations, as adopted by the National Executive Committee, must be hastily implemented. So those are some of the issues that in relation to implementing the NEC decision, it means, because the NEC said, we agree with the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, and which arise from the public protector recommendations. So they need to be implemented expeditiously. That is what is the resolution there. Age limit, we say in terms of the age limit, that the Youth League must not have the 37-year-olds going forward. Me, I left almost at 40, but I'm saying it must go, the number must go down. We're saying that the Youth League, which has got its own constitution, but it derives its existence from the constitution of the ANC, it must consider in its Congress to reduce the number, given the fact that the constitution, the constituency they lead is younger. So the 35, it is really old. It's almost in the club of the 40s. So they need to consider to slash the number downwards. That's what we recommend. We can't take decision on their behalf, but we say that in their own Congress, they need to deal with this matter. And now this decision is binding. They've got no option. They've got to consider the age question and give us a report back, and it must be reflected in their constitution. The question of, oh no, recall my Twitter account. No ways. And then I've answered the question of the Judicial Commission as to when and where, what time. It's a matter that must be processed by the National Executive Committee, but the recommendation is that it must be implemented hastily, as per the decision of the National Executive Committee. It is reaffirmed. So the new NEC will implement that. Thank you very much.
It's just the last two hands. They have to go to the plenary. Professor Boysen, there's a mic just behind you.
Saying that the relationship between the two centers of power has to be managed. I was interested in what you specifically meant by manage. You have an early explanation of some aspect of it, but in practice, how do you envisage that working? Thank you very much.
Keldin.
Okay, so to follow up on Professor Boyce's question on you're saying NEC must manage the two centers of power. Does that mean that President Zuma's future also lies in the hands of NEC now, since the business and civil societies are already calling for the new ANC Top 6 to say President Zuma must be recalled? Thank you.
No, if the decision to recall the president arises in the context of the new National Executive Committee, that will be the decision of the ANC. It will be the decision of the National Executive Committee in terms of the NEC being the center of power. So the resolution cannot speak to that. It says that the two centers of power, as they arise, as we speak, they must be managed. But should the NEC take a decision not to recall, take other decision further than that, it will be the decision of the NEC as the center of power, which is basically not negotiable. So management means you handle things properly. Probably, I don't know in English, the deepest meaning of management. It means that you must manage, you must do things in an organized way. You know, there must not be tension. That led to the recall of President Mbeki, because there was tension between the other center and the president, and then led to the recall of the president. Remember in Polokwane, we were exactly where we were in Polokwane, where the president, who was the president of the ANC, was a president of the country no more of the ANC. So what conference says arising from that experience, it is not something new to us. It says that it must be managed. But should there be a recall, the NEC have got that right to take that decision. By the way, not the national officials. So the NGOs and all other groups, they must know that officials have got no such powers to recall anybody. It is the National Executive Committee collective that take a decision. And they take the decision in the best interest of the African National Congress. So I don't want to talk about that. If it arises, if Zizi is still the spokesperson, he will relate to you. And the new Secretary General and whoever. If that matter arises, I've got no such powers. I'm just reporting what the people have resolved in the conference. So I don't want to engage in that. Thank you very much. It's been nice to making business with you till we meet again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will take a 10 minutes break before we call another commission so that we can file and cross live. Thank you. Yeah.